This week on Christian World News, honoring a servant's life. George H.W. Bush is not just a former president of the United States, but an example of a well-lived, faith-filled life.
Plus, a modern-day Book of Acts, how the church in the Middle East is pressing through persecution and sharing the gospel message.
And missionaries to the tech industry. These believers are learning how to live their faith in the workplace. Welcome to Christian World News, everyone. I'm Wendy Griffith.
And I'm Mark Martin. In the days after the passing of George Herbert Walker Bush, Americans celebrated a life well lived. The former president began a lifetime of service at 18 years old when he joined the Navy to fight in World War II. He eventually became the 41st president of the United States. This week, we learned about his quiet faith and the Christian principles that guided him. Among them was a reliance on prayer. During his presidency, he spoke with CBN founder Pat Robertson about the need for prayer in the Oval Office.
Abraham Lincoln said he couldn't handle the job except on his knees. Have you found recourse to God in prayer often in your presidency?
You have to. The more I'm there, the more I understood what Lincoln meant. The more I understood the need to have some lift, some strength greater than yourself. I especially found that at the time I had to make this, now it looks easy, but a crucial decision about committing someone else's sons and daughters into combat. And the decision rests only with the president for that, only the president. And there was certainly time and need for prayer on that one.
And Gary Lane is former Washington bureau chief for CBN News and joins us for more. Gary, you had the opportunity to meet President Bush. Well,
yes.
Tell us your impressions.
Well, I met him before he was president during the 1980 primary in Michigan. He ran against Ronald Reagan. My impression at the time, he was a very pleasant man, very friendly and warm. He seemed to care about me. He put me at ease because as a young reporter, I was very nervous about meeting someone who may become president. But he was delightful, Wendy, very pleasant and kind.
He described himself as a man of quiet faith. Did you see that played out as you were covering him?
I think in Washington, yes. I mean, look, he was raised as an Episcopalian, so the belief was you don't wear your faith on your sleeve. You're very private about your faith. So it was very hard for George H.W. Bush to talk about things Christian and about his faith. But it played out in his policies. He was very much pro-life, even though Barbara, his wife, was not. And he, as a child, was raised with his mother reading from the Bible every morning, is what he said.
Well, he's been described as a humble servant. Those are biblical qualities that seem to be much lacking in Washington today. Did you think the same?
Yeah, he was very humble, and I think that's a little something that is lacking from Washington, D.C. and our leaders today. He was not a polarizing figure. He tried to get along with everyone. Of course, he had a Democratic Congress, and he was a Republican. He had to get along. But he always went back to his faith, I think, Wendy, because he was taught that those that are given much, much is required, and he believed that. In addition to that, one of his favorite verses was Proverbs 27. And in that verse it says, don't allow another man to praise you, or allow another man to praise you, not your own lips.
Right.
So he was taught humility from a young age, and he lived that out as president.
We're not seeing that much with our current president.
Well, I think a lot of our leaders were not seeing that from. It's all about themselves.
The last 2 days, the eulogies and the ceremonies that we've seen have been so extraordinary and so heartwarming. Can you recall a time when we've seen a president honored to this extent?
Even Reagan wasn't honored to this extent, Wendy. I think it's because Bush was someone who did try to get along. And what goes on in Washington is you get two extremes. You know, when you have a president who appears a bit extreme, then the opposite side, the left, becomes more extreme in their rhetoric and the way they respond. So George W. Bush was not considered an extreme person. Many conservatives would say he was more like a Democrat, and that's why everyone loves him.
Yeah, but he'll be missed. Thanks so much, Gary.
Sure.
Presidents, world leaders, family, and friends joined the Bush family to celebrate his life at the National Cathedral. As White House correspondent Ben Kennedy shows us, it was a time of laughter, tears, prayer, and praise.
From the Capitol Hill steps to the halls of the National Cathedral and beyond.
I believe in God, the Father Almighty, creator of heaven and earth.
The country honored the nation's 41st president, George Herbert Walker Bush. George W. Bush delivered the eulogy for his father, the last person he spoke to before passing away.
I said, "Dad, I love you and you've been a wonderful father." And the last words he would ever say on earth were, "I love you too."
Seated in the front row alongside the Bush family was President Trump and First Lady Melania Trump, along with former Presidents Barack Obama, Bill Clinton, and Jimmy Carter. Christian recording artist Michael W. Smith, a longtime friend of the Bush family, sang Friends.
Though it's hard to let you go, in the Father's hands we know.
It means something because I've been friends with him for 29 years. And so the fact that he wanted me to sing at his funeral, it's just an honor beyond words, it really is.
Smith recalled seeing President Bush a mere months before he passed away.
As we were leaving, we just gave him a hug and said, "Hey, we love you. We love you. Thanks. It's so good to see you." And then, about the time we were back, he kind of get his little finger in the air and he had that little sparkle in his eye. He said, "Friends are friends forever." That's what he said. That's the last thing he said to us.
And now you're singing Friends.
It's crazy. And Deb and I walked out there thinking, you know what? That might be the last time that we see him.
Reverend Dr. Russell Levinson was with the former president in his final days and shared a moment he witnessed between Bush and his former Secretary of State James Baker, a man he called his little brother.
Secretary Baker was at the foot of the president's bed, and toward the end, Jim Baker rubbed and stroked the president's feet for perhaps half an hour. The president smiled at the comfort of his dear friend. Here I witnessed a world leader who was serving a servant who had been our world's leader. And what came to mind was Jesus.
The 94-year-old served his country as president, vice president, World War II veteran, and even CIA director. He guided the U.S. through the Gulf War and the breakup of the Soviet Union.
He stood in the breach against tyranny and discrimination. And on his watch, a wall fell in Berlin. A dictator's aggression did not stand.
But one of his proudest moments was that of a husband and a father. Married more than 7 decades to Barbara, their marriage would bring 6 children, including George, who followed in Dad's footsteps as the country's 43rd president.
A great and noble man, the best father a son or daughter could have. And in our grief, let us smile knowing that Dad is hugging Robin and holding Mom's hand again.
Now, former President Bush is only the 19th person to be honored with a state funeral. His casket is in Houston, Texas for a service, and he will be buried next to his wife Barbara and his daughter Robin, who died at just 3 years old. Ben Kennedy, CBN News, the White House.
Thanks, Ben. Coming up, in the cradle of Christianity, modern-day believers are living like the book of Acts.
God Almighty is a God of blessing. He always wants to bless His people. But how do you get that blessing? And what principles will unlock that secret?
In Miraculous Blessings, Pat Robertson shows you how to open the floodgates of God's awesome blessings in your life.
In order to have a blessing, you've got to be blessable.
Discover what the Bible has to say about God's covenant of blessing, the laws of blessing, and what are the hindrances to the blessings of God.
The words of Jesus, they are as valid as the law of gravity, and if we follow those laws, we will be blessed.
You'll see amazing true stories of everyday people whose lives were rescued and transformed by God's miraculous blessings.
But even the doctors acknowledged that this had to be a miracle.
Call 1-800-700-7000 or visit CBN.com to become a CBN partner and get miraculous blessings today.
Hello, I'm Terry Newsom. Did you know there are more than 148 million orphans in the world today? 148 million. But it was 3 little girls that taught me about the plight of orphans. My husband and I spent nearly a month immersed in the daily activities of a Ukrainian orphanage as we waited to adopt 3 sisters. I saw firsthand the utter loneliness, the pain of rejection, and the overwhelming desire to be loved. That experience changed me forever. And out of it grew a ministry from my heart called Orphans Promise. Today, we're helping orphans and vulnerable children in more than 50 countries worldwide. Thousands of children are now in safe homes. They're being educated, and they're learning life skills. I'm asking you to join with me and become family to these children. Will you call the number on your screen right now? Because every child deserves a chance to be happy.
Welcome back to Christian World News. In England, the Prince of Wales called for peace in the Middle East and an end to the persecution of Christians there. Prince Charles made the unprecedented plea from the pulpit in London's Westminster Abbey. In recent years, he has spoken out more forcefully on behalf of persecuted minorities. In his message, he praised the Christians who suffered but stayed true to their faith.
In recent years, I have had the great privilege of meeting so many Christians who, with such inspiring faith and courage, are battling oppression and persecution, or who have fled to escape it. Forgiveness, as many of you know far better than I, is not a passive act or submission. Rather, it is an act of supreme courage, of a refusal to be defined by the sin against you.
4 Middle East patriarchs attended the special service, along with the Archbishop of Canterbury, Roman Catholic, Jewish, and Muslim leaders.
In recent years, the church in the Middle East has endured some dark days, but some believe the lives of believers today are reflecting the heroes and heroines of the past in the place where Christianity was born. Chris Mitchell brings us that story from Jerusalem.
Across the Middle East, Christians and the church have suffered terrible persecution, yet there is still optimism here.
I see the church is standing and standing strong with all of the difficulties and with all of the atrocities and all the persecution.
Egyptian-born Yvette Isaac believes that's because they're continuing the testimony of the early believers.
I really believe every day a new page of the book of Acts is being written.
And Isaac wants the church in the West to know what's happening here.
There are brothers and sisters, Christian brothers and sisters who are living there. And if it wasn't for them, first, we will not hear about Christianity in the West. Because of the church in the Middle East, Christianity spread all over the world.
Yet she says the pressure on Christians has been enormous.
That's where it's all started. And the enemy's focus is to destroy it. The enemy's focus is to empty the Middle East from Christianity. So he's putting all of this pressure, and we have seen all kinds of pressure under the people.
Isaac hosts a television program to the Middle East, and she believes Christian media can play a big role to help Christians.
The church needs to know the truth. The Christian media needs to air and to show the world the stories from there. If we just depend on the secular media, we will get what's their agenda for the world to hear. But awareness is very important. That's why we have many clips of Christian people that they suffer and they tell their stories.
One of the stories she tells are the Christians who suffered under ISIS.
We go to Iraq and to Syria, and we go to these places, and we try to empower the girls that they came out of captivity. Christians in Syria and in Iraq, they don't want to speak too much. Probably it's a fear, but when we go there, they open up, and they feel like they can open up and tell us their stories. So we share their stories after their permission to the world.
She tells one story of an Orthodox priest and an evangelical pastor.
An Orthodox priest told me, you know, when there was no water and there are only few drops of water left, I would rather divide it with the evangelical pastor, because I know if we both live, we're going to be more powerful together. If I live and he dies, I'm weaker.
She hopes each part of the body of Christ will do their part.
What am I called to do? Especially in the Western world. The Western Church needs to understand the importance of the existing of Christians in the Middle East at this time.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Coming up, missionaries for the new world, how these young believers are taking the gospel to the tech world.
Parents, the Superbook Bible app is a great way to get your child reading the Bible, because in today's busy world, we can use some help. The free Superbook Bible app has fun stuff your kids will love. They'll have a blast learning the Bible, playing great games, watching cool videos, discovering heroes in the Bible. They'll have fun while they learn God's Word. The Superbook Kids Bible app, available now.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
We had 4 jobs that didn't go right, but we didn't waver in our faith.
That's when God put on my heart that we needed to do the well.
Within a couple of days, we got an insurance refund check that we had no idea was coming.
And here we are, this year, it's just boom.
You go out and help other people and you get rewarded for it.
Get Pat Robertson's latest teaching, Miraculous Blessings.
In November, 4 Christians from Finland were arrested in the Muslim nation of Malaysia. Their crime? Handing out pens with Bible verses on them. One of the Christians, Aja Avnery, told CBN News the group was on vacation and was handing out the pens as gifts and had no idea it was a problem.
We were treated like a very big criminals there. And one of the officers, they told us that it is a big crime what you did. I asked them, don't you have a religious freedom and you can't be a Christian in this country? And they told, yes, you can be a Christian in this country, but you can't tell anyone about it.
Wow. The group was held in jail for several days and could have been sentenced up to 5 years. Officials eventually released them all. Aya said she hopes her story will highlight the persecution Christians suffer all around the world.
A Kentucky nun is helping eradicate cholera from Haiti. Sister Lorraine Lauter is working with a group called Water with Blessings, distributing water filters throughout the impoverished island nation. Success in one village caused the government to even close a cholera clinic there. Sister Lorraine and other workers instruct Haitians known as water women to filter water for their families and neighbors. She explains that her faith in God motivates her to help the Haitian people combat cholera.
I just have a very strong conviction in my heart that God means for all people to have access to clean water, that's God's will, and that our task is to fulfill God's will.
To see more of Sister Lorraine's interview, be sure to catch this week's episode of The Global Lane on the CBN News channel or at cbnnews.com.
7 in 10 Americans use social media, which means whoever creates it has enormous power to influence.
That's why Bethel Church in California has created a school to send what it calls digital missionaries. Heather Sells explains.
The Bethel Tech School aims to send digital missionaries into the marketplace to impact the culture right where it's at.
We started thinking about how do we actually shift the mindset of communities and of how do we shift the mindset of society. You can create new laws, you can create you can create, you can put people in political places, but if you don't change the way people think, you're not going to change culture.
Bethel pastor Chris Valaton is on to a cultural shift that's hard to measure, the many ways in which we are all connected digitally and how that influences our thinking. It's a shift that has come quickly. In 2005, just 5% of American adults used at least one social media platform. Today, it's 70%. The Pew Research Center says Facebook is still the most widely used, but Twitter, Pinterest, Instagram, and LinkedIn are also big.
So we just got this idea of what if we raise up digital missionaries and we send them like a people group, like we send people to Africa and India and some of these dark places, What would happen if the darkest places on the planet, they're not geographic areas, they're actually social groups.
The Bethel Tech School is a faith-based program that trains what it calls technologists to enter the workplace with excellence. It offers accelerated 33-week online programs for students of all ages to enter a workforce that needs talent.
There will be over 1 million unfilled tech jobs within the next 2 years. These aren't white or blue collar jobs, these are the new collar jobs.
Bethel's philosophy to bring kingdom values to the workplace, not just to bring salvation to workplace colleagues, but to shape media giants in a way that uplifts and ultimately points millions of social media users to Christ. Reporting in Redding, California, Heather Sells, CBN News.
Thanks, Heather. For more great stories about the church around the world, you can visit the Christian World News webpage. Find it at cbnnews.com. We'll be right back.
When you give, smiles grow bigger. When you care, homes are happier. When you comfort, the hurt goes away. When we all come together to love, miracles happen.
Hello, I'm Terry Newsom. Did you know there are more than 148 million orphans in the world today? 148 million. But it was 3 little girls that taught me about the plight of orphans. My husband and I spent nearly a month immersed in the daily activities of a Ukrainian orphanage as we waited to adopt 3 sisters. I saw firsthand the utter loneliness, the pain of rejection, and the overwhelming desire to be loved. That experience changed me forever. And out of it grew a ministry from my heart called Orphans Promise. Today, we're helping orphans and vulnerable children in more than 50 countries worldwide. Thousands of children are now in safe homes. They're being educated, and they're learning life skills. I'm asking you to join with me and become family to these children. Will you call the number on your screen right now? Because every child deserves a chance to be happy.
Hello? Is this thing on? Hey, kids, do you love games? And do you love discovering things? Yeah. Well, do ya?
Then you're gonna love this. It's the new free Superbook Kids Bible app. You can play games, watch videos, find answers to your questions, and a whole lot more. The new Superbook Kids Bible app. Free downloads available on iTunes and Google Play now.
According to a new census, nearly a third of Australians say they have no religion. The country is rapidly becoming more secular, and Christianity is also declining.
Oh, man. But churches like Hillsong and Planet Shakers are going against this trend. Lucille Toulousan gives us this report from Australia.
Churchgoers say attending a Sunday service at Planet Shakers or Hillsong is like going to a concert. Both churches are world-renowned for their worship bands. Planet Shakers senior pastor Russell Evans says they have been blessed with powerful songs. But more important is how worship ushers the congregation into the presence of God.
We can touch people's hearts with the presence of God and they can be changed in their heart. Then we can disciple them to change their world.
Planet Shakers began in 2004 with 12 people. It has now grown to more than 30,000 in 14 years. Pastor Evans says the big number of people going to their church is a miracle because only 8% of Australians attend church services.
The challenge with the church is sometimes we don't become speaking the language of the day, and we wonder why we're not winning the next generation. If you can speak the language and have power to change people's lives, the gospel's the power of God, then people want to connect with it. This generation wants to encounter God. They just don't want to know about God, they want to encounter Him.
Busloads of high school kids flock to Planet Shakers Church on Sunday afternoons. Youth leaders collect them from different parts of the city. And they say that it's in this church that they find their identity and a sense of belongingness.
Naya, who suffered from anorexia and severe depression, is one of them.
I was getting bullied at the time. A couple of days after, I went to hospital and I woke up 3 days later. One of my cousins from Planet Shakers encouraged me to come to church, and that's when I encountered God. I went back to school and I kept coming to church. And now I'm becoming a leader at Planet Shakers. I couldn't be more thankful.
Even if you look at Australian youth today, mental health and mental illness is on the rise. So many teenagers have come in broken, and it's in the presence of God, in services and in small groups, that is where they've found that love, they found that hope, that joy that they've been looking for.
Founded in 1983, Australia's megachurch Hillsong has expanded to 69 services in 27 locations across the country. Each week, more than 40,000 people attend Hillsong services. Like Planet Shakers, its efforts are focused on reaching young people for Christ. Born into a church with a global influence, Hillsong youth pastor Laura Toggs sees the importance of carrying on the church's vision. Its goal is to draw the nations to Jesus by meeting the needs of the emerging generation. Thus, the youth movement of Brand New Praise and Worship, Young and Free, was created.
I'm always amazed because I'll look out and I'll just see everywhere we go young people dancing in that joy, dancing in that freedom, and I think, wow, that's such a fulfillment of the vision that God placed within our hearts. Psalm 145 says, for one generation shall praise your works to another. And so for us, it's about, okay, let's bring another generation through. That's how the church has kept alive for all of these years, and it's why the church will still, be at the forefront, like in the years to come.
Both Hillsong and Planet Shakers are determined to win the remaining 92% of Australia to Christ. Lucille Talusan, CBN News, Melbourne.
Thanks, Lucille. I am such a huge fan of Hillsong. And isn't it interesting, though, that there aren't as many Christians in Australia, but they have some of the most incredible worship music that comes out of there?
That's so true. It's so passionate. I think the enemy is attacking Australia because of that. It's one of the reasons.
God bless Australia.
That's right. Well, thanks for joining us this week.
Until next week, from all of us here at Christian World News, goodbye and God bless you.